Hi. I have a rock in my hand. It's sharp, heavy, and I'm absolutely going to use it. In front of me are 3 boys. One of them is smiling at me in that kind of way where he knows exactly how the story is going to end. Another one has his phone out, recording. The other one is hopping on his heels, excited. I have had years of martial arts training, and I know exactly what I'm capable of. And I am furious. So here's the question I want to ask each and every one of you today. What do I do? Now, a couple of you just now probably ran a story. You thought about what your parents have said about violence. Maybe you were thinking about a moment in a book or a scene from a movie. But you didn't run to a philosophy textbook. You didn't run a logical calculation. You ran a story. That's what we all do. That's what humans have always done. And I want to pull us away from that street corner with me with the rock, because I want to tell you how I got there. I was 6 years old. On my living room floor, and on the screen in front of me, I watched a skinny, unwanted boy reach out and tear a stone column out of the earth. Disney's Hercules from 1997. And something deep inside of me said, yes, that. I want that. Not the glory of the gods, not even the super strength, just the feeling of being impossible to hurt. Because that's the thing when you're a small little boy who gets pushed around at school. That Hercules story doesn't just sit there. It does something to you. Another day, a couple weeks after that, my mother takes me to an entirely new venue, a karate dojo. And this dojo is full contact, no padding, no holding back. I lost teeth at that place. I got hit hard by people who were better than me. And I was absolutely enthralled. Because what I learned from that place was something more valuable than just physical strength. What I learned there was a discipline which taught me that physical strength, physical size, was not the single most important thing that I could experience. It told me something very specific. It told me that the violence that I was learning there was not a tool for domination. It taught me that I do not start the fight. And if you can walk away, you should. I learned an entirely new story that day, the disciplined warrior's mentality. Now, I want you to think about what I've just kind of described, because I came with this story, this talk with all of you, with the Hercules story that had a very different idea of what it was to be powerful. And just now I've shared with you a new one. 2 stories in direct contradiction with each other. Now, this isn't merely just my own story. It's one of the oldest stories there is. I would like you to bear with me for a second here, because you're going to have to listen to me talk about history. When the Greeks were teaching their children about what it was to be a good person, they didn't give them a philosophical treatise on courage. What they gave them was Achilles. Achilles, brilliant, wrathful, and unstoppable force. The greatest warrior that ever lived in ancient Greece. And the lesson of Achilles was not subtle. Glory is worth dying for. Rage, when justified, is magnificent. The hero burns bright and brief, and that is enough. Over the course of many centuries, however, this idea and these sets of values changed through migration, through changing ideas and the slow pressure of the changing times. A new story began to emerge. A story not from Achilles, but from a carpenter from Nazareth who said, "Blessed are the meek, who said, "Turn," the other cheek, who said, "The last shall be first." Now, I want you to really think about what's just happened over here, because the Greeks, the same people, have undergone a transformation through two distinctly different stories, two distinct different modes of what it meant to be a good person, to pursue virtue. Now, as you can see here, these archetypes, they get inside of us. They don't feel just like stories anymore. They feel like reality, and that is when they become the most dangerous, because once those stories are inside of us, they don't feel just like stories. It's not just a narrative to follow. It feels like reality. Now, I want you to come back with me to that street corner, because I had these two stories inside of me at this moment. It was an ordinary afternoon. I was walking with my brother to McDonald's. Nothing more fancy than that. Regular day. And then I suddenly hear a door open. My heart begins to race, but I continue to move forward. That's the disciplined warrior's mentality. Keep moving. Do not engage. Protect my brother. It's running exactly as it should. The door opens again. And with the practiced cruelty of people who have done this more often than not, slurs, obscenities, and another rock is thrown. But this one almost hits my brother. And that is the moment the Hercules story woke up. Not gradually, but immediately, completely, like a switch. Because this was no longer just about me. This was my brother. This was my blood. And everything that I had been taught, everything that I had learned about what it meant to be a protector, to be a big brother, and everything that I had been taught regarding violence, thrown out the window. Because what was demanded of me then was simple and unambiguous. Do something. Now, I realized at this point, some of you might be feeling a little uncomfortable. But I want to be really clear about my mental state here. I was not out of control. I did not see red. I was, and this is perhaps the more shameful admission over here, I was completely rational. I recognized that these three boys posed a threat which I probably couldn't overcome without a tool. So, I picked up a rock. It was sharp, heavy, the kind of thing that doesn't just hurt. It damages. I approached those three boys at the side of that corner, and I saw the three of them. One centered right in the middle, smiling at me because he felt that he already knew how this was going to go down. The second had his phone out, recording. The third one was hopping on his heels, excited for what he thought was going to happen. But then I began to recognize that they had done this before. They had played the same scenario out probably time and time and time and time and time and time again, with me in the role of humiliated victim. And then something changed, but not in the world, but in me. A single quiet thought cut through all of the noise, and it said, am I simply performing for them? Is this the righteous anger that I'm feeling? Is this the stone in my hand? Is this really my story? Or is this the story that they set up for me the moment they first threw their stone? I looked at the rock in my hand, and I let it fall. The sound of that rock falling did not feel like wisdom. It did not feel like I had been overcome with a serene sense of understanding. I felt that rock fall, and it felt like failure. Now, I think it's really important to stay with that feeling for a while because it's one of the most honest things I can share with you about today's presentation. I walked away from that fight. I walked away from those three boys with my brother. They threw another stone at us, and it missed. I felt that shame for the greater part of many, many, many months. Now, intellectually, I knew I had done the right thing. I knew that by not engaging, I had avoided so many more problems that I couldn't have possibly imagined. But emotionally, I had failed my brother. Emotionally, I had failed myself. I had proven that I was still the small, scared boy pretending to be Hercules. And that shame followed me for many, many years, because here's the thing about knowing the better story, choosing the better path. That old story, it doesn't just lie there. It accuses you. It calls you a coward and all of the language that you were taught to value. Because choosing the better story, even when you know the truth of this thing, is really hard to understand. And to overcome it takes time and patience and other people. It was my friend Jake who first really spoke to me about this, that made me consider a different way. He told me, Kalen, I'm glad that you weren't there with us that day. And that felt to me like a blow, because for the longest time I felt that if I was only there, if only I could have been with my friends, I could have made a difference. That was what the shame that had so gripped me told me. But then he continued, Kalen, if you were there, it would have escalated. And that escalation would have led nowhere good. Now, it took me a lot longer than I'd like to admit, months honestly, for what he said to me to really sink in. But what Jake had given me in that moment was a new story, not the Hercules story, and not even the Disciplined Warriors one exactly. It was something a little bit more nuanced. It was one that said, the measure of what you are capable of is not whether or not you are capable of acting. It's whether you choose not to. And that's where I really want to continue here, because I feel more than anything, it's not through argument that we begin to really internalize these new stories. The new stories that we choose to embrace, we have to live them. The experiences that are granted to us by following these better paths, by following these new stories, it takes time for the body to catch up where intellectually you already knew you were on the right path. And that's where I want to really lead us today, where I really want to end off today's presentation, because right now, all of us are standing at the edge of knowing. The old maps are no longer really capable of guiding us to where we need to be. AI is capable of generating any story in any voice for any purpose. Pictures construct rather than capture reality. And information is arriving faster than wisdom can process it. And the question isn't whether the stories will change. They always have, and they always will. The question is, will we be knowledgeable enough? Will we be honest enough? Will we be brave enough to face these challenges, to look inside of ourselves and confront the narratives that are writing us? Will we be able to look at the map, to read it clearly, and ask, was this made for the world that I am living in right now? Or am I merely a performer in someone else's story, just waiting for someone to hand me the rock? That's all, everybody. Thanks for your time.